Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Asto Tarasata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Sri Guru Parampara Ki Jai Sri Sri Kodanditaya Mayapur Shashi Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Paramanandi Haribol Krishna Krishna Srimati Shivaram Swami. I'll just carry on, but at the end of this time, I'll say something about Gorakishore Das Babaji. In fact, just let me get that up on my thing now. Oh, there it is. Just give us a second. I've got something here. No, it's okay. It may even be the same thing, but Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 9, The Appearance of the Demon Vritrasura, text number 48. Kim durapam mayi prite tatapi vibhudarshabha maye kanta matir nanyan matuvanchati tatvavit. So we'll do the word for word. So what? Durapam, difficult to obtain. Mai, when I. Prite, satisfied. Tatapi, still. Vibhuda Rishabha, O best of the intelligent demigods. Mayi, in me. Ekanta, exclusively fixed. Mati, whose attention. na anyat, not anything other, mata, than me, vanchati, desires, tatvavit, one who knows the truth. Translation: O best of the intelligent demigods, although it is true that nothing is difficult for one to obtain when I am pleased with him, a pure devotee whose mind is exclusively fixed upon me does not ask me for anything but the opportunity to engage in devotional service. So let's do that responsively. O best of the intelligent demigods, although it is true that nothing is difficult for one to obtain when I am pleased with him, a pure devotee whose mind is exclusively fixed upon me does not ask me for anything but the opportunity to engage in devotional service. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When the demigods finished offering their prayers, they anxiously waited for their enemy Vitrasura to be killed. This means that the demigods are not pure devotees. Although without difficulty one can get anything he desires if the Lord is pleased, the demigods aspire for material profit by pleasing the Lord. The Lord wanted the demigods to pray for unalloyed devotional service, but instead they prayed for an opportunity to kill their enemy. This is the difference between a pure devotee and a devotee on the material platform. Indirectly, the Lord regretted that the demigods did not ask for pure devotional service. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Pardajana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Kim Durapam Mayi Prite Tatapi Vibhudarshabha Maye Kantamate Nanyan Mato Vanchati Tatvavit. O best of the intelligent demigods, although it is true that nothing is difficult for one to obtain when I am pleased with him, a pure devotee whose mind is exclusively fixed upon me does not ask me for anything but the opportunity to engage in devotional service. So, in the Sri Ishopanishad, in the invocation, it's explained Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are also perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. So the material universe is a complete and perfect arrangement by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself doesn't engage himself directly in the sort of workings, the functionings of the material universe. But that doesn't mean to say that everything is just going on sort of randomly. It's not that Krishna just, okay, there's the material world, and now I'll just sort of leave it to its own devices and hope that everything carries on orbiting, hope that everything carries on functioning, hope that everything carries on working. But part of his arrangement, part of the process of creation of the material universe is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead empowers particular personalities to be responsible for the functioning and the management of the material universe. And these personalities who are responsible for the governance and the management and the organization of the material affairs of the material universe are known as demigods. So literally it kind of means half or small gods. And actually, because very often either the sort of in the broader social context of what we now today call Hinduism, or even in the specific context of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, then one of the criticisms, or one of, not always a criticism, sometimes a criticism, but one of the sort of doubts which is very often raised is this whole concept of, well, you worship so many gods. You worship all these different gods. You've got this god and that god. You've got this one with an elephant head, and this one who looks like a giant monkey, and there's this one, and there's this one, and there's this one, and there's this one. And there's actually 36 million demigods in the material universe. And there's this sort of misunderstanding that we're worshiping many, many gods. And then included within that category is also included Vishnu and Rama and Krishna and Nrsingadev, and then they're sort of all grouped together along with Ganesh and Hanuman and Lakshmi Devi and Shiva and Brahma and Indra, and everyone's all grouped together. It's just all these different gods that you're worshiping. But actually, there's a difference between God with a big G and God with a little g. So the demigods are gods. They're super powerful living entities who have been empowered by God with a big G to organize and manage the affairs of the material universe. So there's 36 million of them, and obviously we're not going to get into who does what. But for example, Indra is in charge of rainfall, and there's in the sun there is a personality, Vivasvan, who's sort of providing heat and light from the sun. This is really generalizing. Because it's there's a lot more to it than that. But right down to the functionings of our own material body, right down to every single thing that happens in the material world happens because there is a demigod who allows that to happen, who sort of makes the arrangement so that those different functions can happen and can go on. A nice point here is, and I'm not sure who it is exactly, excuse me, I'm probably gonna have to take this off. Marigolds are not the best thing for someone with hay fever. Hare Krishna. For example, the demigod that's sort of responsible for the central nervous system of the body, I've been informed by a few different people that demigod is the same that's in charge for the rivers and streams. And when you look at it from above, it looks the same. If you look at the central nervous system, how it actually looks within the body, and then if you were to take a satellite image and you look at all the different rivers and all the different streams that exist in a country, it has a very, very similar form. And the closer you are to running water, the more the central nervous system actually sort of comes into balance. So there's all these different arrangements going on in the material universe. And these personalities, demigods, they are devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They're devotees of Krishna. But there are different types of devotees. There's different categories of devotees. Briefly, there are three sort of main categories of different types of devotees. Anyone know what they're called? Anyone that studied the Nectar of Instruction or Nectar of Devotion? What are the three types of devotees? Who remembers? Vrinda. That's a little further on. I'm more thinking Yeah. Kanista, Madhyam, and Uttama. These are like the three different sort of categories of devotees. Like with anything in our philosophy, there's always a lot of subcategories and subcategories, and a lot of detail is there. But very sort of briefly, these are the sort of three different types of devotees that exist. And Kanista literally means not steady. Nishta means fixed or steady, and kanista means unsteady, and it can also be defined as like a materialistic devotee. So you have to excuse me. I can feel a sneeze slowly brewing within the back of my mouth. So. And usually my sneezes tend to be more aggressive and violent than most. So my apologies in advance. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. So a kanista is described as an unsteady devotee and also like a materialistic devotee. And this is pretty much where we all begin in Krishna consciousness. So the goal, the sort of goal of the path of bhakti is pure devotional service. So like Vrinda said, you have Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttama. Uttama means like topmost pure devotee of the Lord. There's actually a very nice verse, and really speaking by now, I should have known the translation for this verse many years ago, and I did actually, but I forgot it. So in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is a book by Srila Rupa Goswami, who is the we chant Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami, who has established within the material world the mission to fulfill the desires of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? So we are known as Rupanuga Bhaktas or Rupanuga Vaishnavas, because the line of teachers who we are coming in, so, well, it actually begins with Lord Brahma, but because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is our Yuga avatar, then immediately after Lord Chaitanya established this personality, Rupa Goswami, as like the head of our specific branch, the specific branch of the Sampradaya or the disciplic line of teachers that we find ourselves in right now. We represent the latest link, apparently, hopefully, maybe one day, the latest link in this particular branch of teachers. And Rupa Goswami was empowered by Lord Chaitanya to sort of head up that particular branch. So Rupa Goswami has written this book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is sometimes known as the handbook of Bhakti Yoga. And in it, he creates like a wonderful synopsis and encyclopedia of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. You know, that this is what it means to practice Bhakti Yoga coming in the line of Lord Chaitanya. So in that verse, he gives this definition of what pure devotional service is. Anya bilasita sunyam gyana kamadhyanavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiya uttama. When first-class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monastic philosophy, and fruitive action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. Now, there's a lot there in that verse, and we could just speak on that verse. In fact, we don't have time to just speak on that verse. There's a lot of information contained right there. But just very briefly and specifically in relation to what we're reading about now with the demigods, is that Uttama Bhakti, one who's on the platform of topmost pure devotional service, must be devoid of all material desires. This is one of the symptoms. Must be devoid of material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy and fruit of action, and must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. So there's a lot of different sort of elements to Uttama Bhakti, pure devotional service, but particularly in relation to what we're speaking about here, that one who's on that platform must be devoid of material desires. So the demigods, although they are devotees of Krishna, they're not pure devotees of Krishna. They're kanista adhikaris, they're materialistic devotees, they're unsteady devotees. And they're asking, interestingly, that they're in a fight, they're in a battle with this demon Vritrasura. Actually, Vritrasura is a devotee, interestingly, but he's taking on this sort of role of a demon, and they're in this battle, and they're depending on Krishna. They're depending on Krishna. Now, this is not a bad thing, that they are dependent upon Krishna. So even a kanista adhikari may not be a first-class devotee, but they're still dependent on Krishna to fulfill their material desires. And there's actually a verse, I believe it's in the second canto, it's very close to the beginning of the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Shukadev Goswami explains that whether one be devoid of all material desires or full of material desires or whatever it is that one wants, one should depend upon Krishna. That's kind of a paraphrasing this particular verse. So it's not a bad thing that these kanista adhikaris are approaching Krishna to fulfill their material desires, because it's better to approach Krishna than to not approach Krishna. It's better to depend upon Krishna than to just depend upon, sort of as the saying goes, the strength of our own arms. So it's not a bad thing that the demigods are depending upon Krishna, but Krishna, as Prabhupada says in the purport, indirectly the Lord regretted that the demigods did not ask for pure devotional service. Because as we learn in the Bhagavad Gita, it's the first thing that most of us learn when we sort of dip our toes into the water, into the ocean. Actually, that's what Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu means, the ocean of the nectar of devotional service. So when we dip our little toe into that ocean of nectar of devotional service, usually the first thing we learn is, you're not that body. This is usually the very first thing that we're taught. This is our first philosophical lesson in what is Krishna consciousness, what is Bhakti Yoga, what is the Bhagavad Gita, what is it all about? Why are you dressed like that? Why do you have these weird haircuts? There's so many questions that come up, but the first thing that we learn is, well, you're not that body. You are not that body. So if you're not that body, who are you? So we are spirit souls. And what is the spirit soul? The spirit soul is Satchidananda, eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss, and has an eternal relationship with Krishna, and can only actually experience that eternity, knowledge, and bliss in its full manifestation when we're actually connected with Krishna, particularly through the process of bhakti. Yoga means to become connected with the Supreme. This is literally what yoga means. So whether we're doing hatha yoga, dhyana yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, whatever kind of yoga it is that we're doing, if we're not feeling ourselves to become more connected with God, then somewhere along the line of our practice of yoga, we're doing something wrong, because that's what yoga is all about. It's about coming connected. But as it's described in the Bhagavad Gita, there is this thing called the yoga ladder, where you have different levels of yoga. And we can either progress gradually through those levels, or we can just go straight to the top and just begin from the topmost yoga system. There's actually a little book that we distribute, the topmost yoga system, which is Bhakti. So Bhakti yoga is all about becoming connected with Krishna, but in the way in which we are eternally connected with Krishna in the spiritual world. So there is this material world, which is governed by the demigods. But beyond this material world, there is a spiritual sky. There is a spiritual world full of unlimited spiritual planets. And everything within that spiritual sky is Satchidananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. And we have a place, we have a home. That's where we belong. That's our eternal residence in that spiritual sky. How do we once again enter into that spiritual sky? Through the process of yoga, particularly through the process of bhakti. And so Krishna is a little disappointed because he has the ultimate welfare of all living entities at heart. So although he, even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, I'm in everyone's heart as the super soul, fulfilling everyone's desires. It's time immemorial. So Krishna grants complete independence to all living entities. We can come and go as we please. We can do as we like. And if we do have desires that want to be fulfilled, ultimately we are dependent upon Krishna for the fulfillment of those desires. But if we're not consciously approaching Krishna for the fulfillment of those desires, then we're sort of missing the point. We're under this illusion that we are the controllers. So approaching Krishna for the fulfillment of our desires means acknowledging and recognizing that we are dependent upon Krishna. So that is a very, very, very positive step forward in our journey, that we're actually recognizing that although what I want is not the ideal thing, still I'm dependent upon Krishna. But what Krishna wants for us to want is pure devotional service. Yeah.
I was thinking maybe in that sense, he would be more pleased if, for example, even if it's paradoxical, to ask him more about, to ask him to have better physical conditions on our body, to engage in devotional service, while we will be asking him something material. At the same time, the purpose of that material will be devotion. While in this example, the demigods ask for the defeating of this enemy, which could even mean something more subtle, than they want to thrive, or succeed. But I mean, even if it's paradoxical, because as a spiritual and material being happens a lot, like one wants to engage purely in spiritual matters, but we also have a body.
Yes.
And so to find a balance between taking care of the body, but without forgetting that to have a body is to have the possibility of use it for devotional service. So I think it just, sometimes this thing is paradoxical, but I thought that maybe it has more purpose on it, in the sense of more directed to devotion, or to more closer to what he will like done.
So this can also be within the realm of pure devotion, in that we need something, or we want something so that we can better serve Krishna. So for example, as long as we're in the material world, how do we serve Krishna? We serve Krishna with our body, with our mind, with our intelligence. These are the tools that we have at our disposal with which we can serve Krishna. So if we have a pure desire that, if my health was better, I would be in a better position to serve Krishna, this is not necessarily outside of the realm of pure devotional service. At the same time, if we see that, I'm praying for better health so I can serve Krishna better, but Krishna isn't giving me that better health, I also have this sort of surrendered attitude that, well, okay, Krishna, perhaps you want me to learn something, and therefore I need to be in a situation where my health is not so good. So we depend upon Krishna, we ask Krishna, but we also are surrendered enough to say, okay, but in the end, it's up to you, whatever you want, whatever you wish. So yeah, it's like that Krishna appreciates that. It's kind of like, sometimes devotees may go to bed at night and say, Krishna, please let me rest nicely tonight. Please let me sleep well so that I have good strength tomorrow to serve you. We're asking Krishna for a good sleep. It's kind of not the usual. It's when you see the prayers of the acharyas, they're not usually praying for a good night's sleep. But what is the motivation behind that? It's that we're asking Krishna for something so that we're in a better position to serve him. And Krishna appreciates that. He appreciates that we're asking for something which will help us to be better devotees or help him to serve him. So this is the point, is that Krishna wants what's best for all living entities. And although he's willing to fulfill the desires of all living entities, he ultimately wishes that the devotee, well, not the devotees, that all living entities would ultimately just come to this point of pure devotional service. So Krishna wants nothing more than the living entities turn away from the material energy and turn back to him. Actually, we're all ultimately dependent upon, none of us are in control. This is the sort of illusion that the demigods, and actually most of us for that matter, very often find ourselves in, is that we sort of fall into this trap of thinking that I do have control over a certain situation. But as it's explained, Krishna has three primary energies, and I always forget the different Sanskrit. We're Tatastha. We're Tatastha. Tatastha Shakti is the spirit soul. And then Bahiranga is the external energy, and Antaranga is the internal energy. So Antaranga, Tatastha, and Bahiranga. So these are the three energies of the Supreme Lord. And Tatastha Shakti, which is us, the living entity, the spirit soul, is known as marginal. So the nature of marginal energy, the nature of Tatastha Shakti, the sort of constitutional nature which cannot be taken away, it can't change, is that Tatastha Shakti has to come under the control of Krishna's energies. So we're either under the control of the external energy or under the control of the internal energy. We are never in control. If we're under the control of the material energy, then we become illusioned, and therefore this is known as Maya. Maya means illusion. Maya means to become illusioned by the material energy. If we're under the control of the internal potency, this is called Yoga Maya, where we're serving Krishna. And anyway, that's a whole big subject. But we have to be under the control of one or the other. We can't be independent. We can't be in control. So a Kanistha devotee has this tendency to forget that actually we're not in control. Whereas once we're able to become a little more steady, Nishtha, and we sort of enter into the realm of Madhyama Adhikari and then hopefully even Uttama Adhikari, then we tend to be a bit more rememberable. Is that even a word? We don't forget. I'm supposed to be teaching people English. We don't forget that Krishna's in control and we're dependent upon Krishna. So the demigods occasionally remember. They do sacrifices, they offer prayers, they chant mantras, but they also have this tendency to forget. And of course, the sort of real prime example of that, which we see over and over and over again in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is Lord Indra. Lord Indra is constantly getting himself into all sorts of trouble because he forgets. It's a horrible, it's an expression which I personally don't like, but it is a sort of expression which is sort of relevant to this particular point, is in the material world, in the English language, we have this expression, you have to know your place. And it's a bit of an intimidating and oppressive sort of expression. You should know your place, is kind of the thing maybe a teacher would say to a child in school. But Indra forgets his place. he forgets that he's the servant of Krishna and he's responsible. But as very often happens, and at the risk of getting too sort of to give the example of events that go on in our material world, but as is the case with any living entity that's given too much power. So we often see this happen with politicians and world leaders, that along with the responsibility comes a certain amount of material facility. So, if someone is made a minister or a prime minister, or, someone is given some high government position, with that comes good salary, a good house, a good car, good sort of material facilities and good comforts. And they become deluded, like bewildered by that situation. So Indra, he's the king of heaven. He has huge responsibility for organizing and managing the material world. But along with that comes a good house. The heaven, the kingdom of heaven is about as good a house as you can get. And with that sort of material facility, he becomes bewildered. He becomes bewildered by that material facility, and therefore he forgets his place. And he sees Krishna, who's the one who gave him the material facility in the first place, and he gets angry with Krishna, envious of Krishna. He tried to kill Krishna's devotees and Krishna's cows. That's really deluded, really, really bewildered, that he turned against Krishna's devotees. So this is the danger of sort of remaining in this kanista position. So as devotees, we shouldn't be discouraged if we are not ideally situated as devotees, but we should be inspired to want to keep moving forward and sort of become more and more steady in our Krishna consciousness. Particularly with the demigods, they are very often bewildered by material desires. So the Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto very clearly says, what is it? Shrimvatam swakata Krishna punyashravana kirtana hridyantasto hiyabadrani vidunoti saritsatam. Lord Sri Krishna, in the heart of the living entities, removes the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages. So as our taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna increases, then proportionately the material desires within the heart decrease. And what is it? Chaitodharpanamajanam bhavamahadavagninirvapanam, the holy name of the Lord, and not just the holy name, but hearing and chanting about Krishna's names, forms, qualities, and pastimes. When we engage in this activity of hearing and chanting about Krishna, then Chaitodharpanamajanam, the unwanted things in the heart, become removed. So the more we engage in this activity, that is why it's so crucial to sort of maintain this good level of sadhana, like to keep up this process of good quality hearing and chanting about Krishna as much as possible. Because to the degree that we're able to do that, to that degree, the unwanted things in the heart decrease, the material desires in the heart decrease. And as those things decrease, we approach the platform of nishta. Anartha nivriti means removing the unwanted things from the heart. So we have shraddha, sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, anartha nivriti. So when we're sort of stuck in this position of anartha nivriti, we want to get beyond there to the point of nishta, becoming more steady, even if we're not 100% free from material desires, but at least significantly enough free of material desires that we're not as unsteady as we once were. And when we're on that platform, when we're more solidly situated on the platform of Nishta, then we're much more well situated for moving forward. I was in Vrindavan a few years ago, excuse me, and His Grace Dinabandhu Prabhu was giving a class, and he was explaining, and this was something that really resonated with me, because he used the example of a roller coaster. So I'm from a place in the north of England called Blackpool, which is roller coaster loca. It's just fun fairs and roller coasters. And when you go up a roller coaster, when you're on the ground looking up at a roller coaster, the scariest thing is when it goes down. But when you're on the roller coaster, the scariest thing is going up. The scariest thing is slowly moving up, and it's tick, 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 taking you up to the top, and it's terrifying. But when you actually get over the top and you start going down, the adrenaline kicks in, and it's all fun and games from that point. So Dinabandhu Prabhu explained that Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, and Narta Nivriti, it's like going up that roller coaster. It takes a long time. It's disturbing, it's distressing, it's difficult, it's challenging. But once you get up to the top and you start coming down, then Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, Prema, everything happens relatively quickly once you sort of over the hill, once you get over the hill, so to speak. So this is where we want to get to, is this point of Nishta. And this will happen through good, steady sadhana, hearing and chanting, especially in the association of devotees, keeping a really, really good practice of hearing and chanting about Krishna, keeping that in the center of our lives. That actually needs to be the center of our lives, is this hearing and chanting about Krishna. If there's time, I'm going to read a little something about Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, whose disappearance it is today. But first of all, we can just see if any devotees have any quick reflections or questions on anything that we've discussed. Panchatattva Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhu. This idea of Indra becoming like deluded or sort of intoxicated by his opulence and his power, and therefore doing horrendous things such as trying to kill the inhabitants of Vrindavan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, we were watching at the university program, we were watching one video, Radhanath Swami, and he was very, very nice video describing that everyone has this deep intrinsic need to love and be loved, and if this is not fulfilled, then this is where all the horrendous actions that come from. And I just wonder, I never thought about it before, but could this extend then to the demigods? Like, where is the root cause for this?
Well, it extends to every single living entity in the material world, because we all have a desire to love and be loved, but more specifically, we have a need to love and be loved by Krishna, because this is the heart of the living entity. We can love and be loved on a material platform. That may bring some comfort, some reassurance, some satisfaction, but to really answer that need that the living entity has to love and be loved, then we have to go to this point of bhakti. Bhakti means to love Krishna and love Krishna's devotees, and to be loved by Krishna and to be loved by Krishna's devotees. This is what bhakti is all about. So, and therefore, if the demigods neglect that connection with Krishna and Krishna's devotees, then they're going to feel that absence, like we all do. So it's vital, like you say, it's vital.
I think maybe it's like when the kings used to have. Thank you. When the kings used to, like in China, for example, they have this idea now that they have to be a servant of the people, and when they forget about that, they lose their true royal essence, because to be royal means that they have to be on service, because they wouldn't be in that position if they wouldn't be all those that are there to be served. I think that maybe in Krishna love, it gives an unconditional, real knowledge of the soul, that the demigods or people, we can get lost thinking that we need this conditional appreciation for our attributes, and not
really for our soul. So we need to give the power of it. We think that those attributes, are like I am big and those are little. But in fact, every part of the universe is Krishna too. So everything that the demigods are over, in fact, they are on service too. No, like you said, it has to be there to organize, and every soul is also a piece of Krishna as well. So it's like, I think that they confuse continuously this difference between real love and real unconditional devotional, like pure, with the conditional love, which is so like with the material conditions. Like today you're up, and then if tomorrow you go down, then all the fear of not being with that love or appreciation anymore, and then they forget so much that they are on that the biggest honor is to be serving, like, because only if you have something to give, you can actually, give something. Like, so you had to receive something to be able to give it back.
Yeah. So therefore, an ideal ruler is Yudhishthira Maharaj, or a pure devotee of Krishna, who sees all of the people within his kingdom as his children, his or her children, who their primary responsibility is to care for and to look after and to connect with Krishna. So the king is supposed to be a representative of the divine. It's actually something I never thought of before, but because recently in Britain, Queen Elizabeth passed away, and therefore I was having, it sort of came up in conversation quite a lot. And one of the things that came up, which struck me, was that this word majesty means that they're actually representative of the divine. That is what it means. So when we say Your Majesty, so we have, His Majesty King Charles, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. This word majesty actually is supposed to mean that they are the representative of God. So you can sort of see how in our modern day monarchies, it's a sort of, it comes from the original monarchy of Varnashram Dharma. Somehow we've forgotten due to time, but actually that's what it's meant to be about. And so a king is meant to be a representative of God and acts on behalf of God and takes care of his or her subjects as being parts and parcels of God, to be cared for on behalf of God. So that's ultimately what it's about. We'll have to stop there. Grantar Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. I am not in charge. I do not know how things work. I do know that there's going to be an arti for Gaur Kishore. I also have a short sort of biography of Gaur Kishore, but it would take about 5 minutes to read. Do we have time, or do we need to stop there and just do the arti? Vrinda, you probably know better than me. So it'd be nice just to spend an extra 5 minutes reading. Okay, so this is just a short, and actually it is appropriate because Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj is a perfect example of an Uttama Adhikari devotee. So this is what we've been speaking about. This is someone who's completely devoid of all material desires. So what we're reading about and speaking about, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj is the living example of that. So in 1849, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji left Grihastha life after the death of his wife. He moved to Vrindavan and took initiation from Sri Bhagavat Das Babaji, a disciple of Sri Jagannath Das Babaji. For over 30 years, Gaur Kishore Das stayed in Vrindavan performing bhajan under the trees at Sri Giri Govardhan, Nandagram, Varshana, Radhakund, Suryakund, Raval, Gokula. Sitting in seclusion, he chanted 200,000 names of Krishna every day, 128 rounds of japa. He felt painful separation from Radha Govinda and cried profusely. As he wandered through the Dwarashavan, the 12 forests of Vraj, he would loudly chant the holy names in a deep voice full of lamentation. He would also relish the following bhajan. I won't read the Sanskrit. O Radhe Radhe, where are you? O goddess of ecstatic love. O Radhe Radhe, all glories to you, O Radhe Radhe. O Radhe Radhe, please show yourself to me and thereby maintain my life. Your most despicable fallen servant calls out to you, O Radhe Radhe. O Radhe, O artful enjoyer of Vrindavan, O Radhe Radhe, O Radhe, O enchantress of Kanu's mind, O Radhe Radhe. O Radhe, O crest jewel of your 8 main girlfriends, O Radhe Radhe, O Radhe, O delightful daughter of Maharaj Vrishabhanu, O Radhe Radhe. Srila Babaji Maharaj's mood of renunciation was unparalleled. Sometimes he ate mud from the banks of Radhakund or the Yamuna. Other times he took madhukari from the Vrajvasis. Madhukari is a Babaji's daily practice of begging a little food from 1 to 7 houses, just as a bee collects a drop of honey from each flower. He saw all the Vrajvasis, residents of Vrindavan, as being the direct personal associates of Radha and Krishna. As a result of this vision, he would pay respect to every person, cow, animal, bird, tree, creeper, insect, and ant in the holy dham. While staying in Varshana, he made a flower garland every day for Rai and Kanu, Radha Krishna. After 30 years of rendering intimate services to Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, Babaji felt inspired by the divine couple to see Sri Navadvip Dham. He visited all the Leela stands of Lord Gauranga in Gauramandal. In Navadvip, he used to sing one bhajan, which means, by receiving Nitai's mercy, one gets Gauranga's mercy, which makes one eligible for Krishna Prema. With Krishna Prema, one can attain the service of Srimati Radharani and the Gopis. Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji was the embodied form of Sri Rupa Raghunath's renunciation. Completely detached, he would wash discarded cloth to cover his body. He drank from a rejected clay pot. Parched rice mixed with Ganges water, or simply some mud from Ganga's banks sustained his life. He carried 2 books written by Sri Narottam Das Thakur, Pratana and Prema Bhakti Chandrika. On Ekadashi, he didn't eat or drink a drop of water. Recognizing to him to be a Mahabhagavat, many tried to serve, but he never accepted. Regularly, he associated with and heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Srila Thakur Bhaktivinod in Swananda Sukhada Kunj in Gadrumadweep. Constantly absorbed in bhajan, Srila Babaji Maharaj had no desire to make disciples. On the request of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, however, he reconsidered. Upon seeing the true humility and deep attachment of Thakur Bhaktivinoda's son for bhajan, Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji accepted one disciple, Sri Varshabhanavi Dayata Das, who is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. To keep mundane people from approaching him for material boons, he once resided in the lavatories at the Kulia Dharmashala in Koladweep for 6 months. When public officials came offering to build him a proper bhajan kutir, Babaji Maharaj locked himself inside and said he already had one. He believed that associating with materialistic people was much worse than the smell of stool in the latrine. Gaurkishore Das Babaji advised a Calcutta doctor who wanted to open a free health clinic in Navadvip Dham, if you really want to live in Navadvip Dham, then give up your desire to run a free clinic for healing sense enjoyers. If you want to render substantial service, then renounce everything except what promotes Hari Bhajan. All other kinds of duties and services simply bind one to the ghastly cycle of karmic reactions. Babaji Maharaj spoke gravely to a newly married man. A Vaishnav wife is extremely rare and difficult to find in this world. If one has the good fortune of having one, he should see it as a benediction from Krishna. The wife worships the husband as her Lord and Master. Similarly, the husband should worship the wife because she is Krishna Dasi, a servant of Krishna. In this way, the husband can protect his devotional enthusiasm by not considering his wife to be his maidservant, but she is always the maidservant of Krishna. One who wants bhojan, eating palatably, will spoil his bhajan, was a favorite quote of Srila Babaji Maharaj. In other words, eating here and there simply to gratify the tongue, bhojan, destroys any attempts to worship Krishna, bhajan. Once a devotee ate some festival prasadam in his bhajan kutir. Babaji Maharaj would not speak to him for 3 days. On the 4th day, he said, "You accepted festival prasad when given by low-class harlots and beautiful women, Because you took food without considering its origin, your bhajan is useless. The essence of Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji's instructions, the divine name of Krishna offers the one and only shelter. One should never try to remember Radha Damodar's transcendental pastimes by artificial methods. Constant chanting of the divine names will purify the heart. By chanting Harinam, the syllables of the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, will gradually reveal the spiritual form, qualities, pastimes of Sri Krishna. Then you will realize your own eternal spiritual form, service, and the 11 particulars of your spiritual identity. In pursuance of Babaji Maharaj's statement, drag my dead body through the streets of Navadweep, a group of so-called advanced devotees proposed to commit the said sacrilege. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, however, challenged them. According to Shastra, one who has had carnal association with a loose woman within the last 24 hours is contaminated and therefore not qualified to touch by Guru Maharaj. Hearing this bold statement, the black-hearted Brahmins made a hasty retreat. On the 19th of November 1915, Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj joined the eternal blissful pastimes of Gandhavika Giridhari. His beloved disciple, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, established his samadhi on the banks of Sri Chaitanya Math's Radha Kund, near Lord Chaitanya's yoga pit in Sridham, Mayapur. In Vraj Leela, he serves Srimati Radharani as Guna Manjari. His Pushpa Samadhi stands beside the Radha Kunj Bihari Gaudiya Math near Radha Kund. Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Shri Sri Kodanitai Mayapur Shashi Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur